If a tree falls in the woods and that whole thing, if everybody in Washington is telling you prices are down, but you know that they're up, does it really matter what they're telling you? Kevin Hassett spoke to Caitlin Collins outside the White House, and Caitlin Collins said, where is the data on prices being down? You're saying they're down, Trump's saying they're down, but we don't see that anywhere. And Hassett tries to play a little bit of a mathematical game, which unfortunately, and I don't fault people, but people are busy living their lives trying to put food on their families, as George W. Bush once famously said. And they don't necessarily know the rhetorical and statistical games that are being played here. Let's play it and see if you notice what he does.
The grocery prices are down. What numbers is he basing that off, given that's not true, and even Marjorie Taylor Greene has acknowledged that it's not accurate?
Right. Well, I guess the question, inflation is down. It's one of those things that very often when people talk about economics, they slip derivatives, as we say. And so the point is that inflation is way down. It averaged 5% under Joe Biden. It's running at about 2.5% right now. And the thing, though, is that people's purchasing power dropped by more than $3,000 because of the inflation of the last 4 years. It's up by about $1,200 this year. And so purchasing power is improving, but we haven't closed the entire gap, and that's why people still feel the pain of the higher prices.
Grocery prices are up.
Well, not everything. I mean, egg prices are down. We used to talk a lot about those. In fact, it was your first question here in the White House. Why haven't you covered the lower egg prices?
But also prices, we certainly have covered that. Energy as well, but grocery prices are up about 1.4% since Trump took
Right, which is a big decline.
Yeah, actually, grocery prices are up about 3%. But there's two rhetorical games that are being played here. First of all, inflation is down. Remember, what was the promise and what's the outcome? The promise was prices will come down. That means deflation. What Kevin Hassett says is, well, on average during Biden's presidency, inflation was 5%. And on average during Trump's so far, it's 2.4. Two deceptive things there. One, Biden's term included COVID-related high inflation numbers that don't have much to do with Biden nor Trump. I mean, they didn't have to do with Trump either. What Biden did oversee is a faster decline in inflation than our Western wealthy counterpart nations. So one of the deceptions is including COVID-era numbers that don't really have anything to do with Biden in that. Now, inflation has been about 3.1% under Trump, but we have to evaluate them based on what they promised, which was that prices would come down. They're still going up, simply more slowly, according to Kevin Hassett, although really the same as the last couple of years of Joe Biden's presidency. So that's the takeaway. During the last couple of years of Biden's presidency and during the first 10 months of Trump's, inflation has been about 3%. Trump has not improved upon the Biden inflation numbers of those last 2 years at all. Follow up. This is now from a Fox News interview with Kevin Hassett, where he talks about the 50-year mortgage. And I love this shit because these guys are so unhinged.
Not yet. Okay. Quick question on this 50-year mortgage. I've heard, I just was watching a panel on the previous hour basically saying, they didn't think it was a great idea because you don't build equity and you pay more over a long period of time. Do you think this is a good plan? Is Kevin Hassett a supporter of a 50-year mortgage plan?
Right. The president mentioned it, and yes, I support the president's idea on this, that what it does is it reduces the monthly payment quite a bit. For a typical home for middle America, and it's by a few $100s a month. And we need to help people get back into homes. As you notice, the first-time home buyers are now like over 40 years old. And so we are focusing on that problem. And the bottom line is, though, that the problem really, again, came because interest rates under Biden inflation went up by 4%. And that about doubled the typical monthly mortgage payment. And we're really studying everything we can. We're about to have a bunch of White House meetings about what we can do.
Isn't the problem that there's not enough houses, there's not enough housing to purchase, so there's a limited supply, and that doesn't really address that.
Demand. You're right. We're addressing both supply and demand as we study this.
It's Martha McCallum is actually correct, and it's wild that they think the problem to housing that's unaffordable is to put people in more years of debt, paying more interest in a way that is going to drive up housing prices. Now, let me explain to you why Trump's 50-year mortgage idea is terrible. It blows up the total amount of interest paid. and it will drive prices up by making houses appear more affordable by lowering monthly payments without creating any more supply. It's a disaster. So think about how this will work. A lot of people shop based on monthly payments. So they go, I can afford $1,000 a month. Cool. So with a 30-year mortgage and a house of a certain price, there's a certain portion of the population that can afford the monthly payment. If you allow stretching the payment from 30 years to 50 years, you've just brought in way more potential buyers that can now afford the house. When you have way more people that want to buy something, what happens? Drives the price up. You pay way more interest over the life of the loan. You build equity even more slowly. You stay in debt decades longer. When you increase people's ability to borrow, prices just go up. So a 50-year mortgage isn't going to create more houses. It'll let buyers bid more for the houses that are there. Developers don't go and lower prices because people can take out longer loans. They raise prices because they're like, hey, by getting a 50-year loan, now the pool of potential buyers for the house I'm selling has just gone up. So this is a crisis that comes from not enough housing supply, especially affordable units. They don't have any plan to deal with that. Zoning restrictions, they don't have a plan to deal with that. In the defense of the Trump administration, zoning is mostly a municipal and state thing. Certainly the federal government could say, hey, we're going to provide some money for municipalities that do zoning changes. But okay, it's not normally something under the purview of the federal government. High land costs, a shortage of multifamily housing, and also construction bottlenecks. None of that is even remotely addressed with getting people the ability to add 20 years to their loans. It's a disastrous idea. They're pitching it as a solution. It really isn't. When I was preparing for my last trip to Italy, I didn't want to spend weeks and weeks trying to learn Italian with the typical apps where you get, flashcards and games, and it doesn't really translate to talking to people. And this is why I turned to our sponsor, Babbel. This is a method that works, and it works quickly. And what really stood out to me was just how personalized Babbel feels. The app was instantly adjusted to my level. I wasn't wasting time on things I already knew. And the review system is really good at making sure that things stick. Babbel's lessons come in 10 to 15-minute chunks. I fit that easily into my schedule. I saw the progress. Before I knew it, I was ordering a cappuccino and their version of a croissant. It's a cornetto. Anyway, I was impressing everybody. People loved it. Babbel is not just about memorization. It uses interactive dialogue, spaced repetition, tips that make the learning feel way more natural. And my audience can get up to 55% off at babbel.com/Pakman. The link is in the description.